A very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
It is Friday, isn't it?
Well, is it?
You're welcome to the program. I'm Kyle Kikiri.
Am I Makinde? Good morning and welcome.
Well, if it's not, we'll fast forward it.
I know, right? It
I'll
has to
make
be
it so.
Friday.
You remember what you were saying yesterday?
Remind me.
No, not right now. We have something else to talk about.
I thought you said good morning. It's a beautiful Thursday.
No.
All right, everybody. Well, you know, you would have thought that some of these scenes, at least, if not, you don't want to see it so soon, or don't even want to see it at all, let alone talk about so soon, especially in the light of how so much attention has been called to some of the actions of men in uniform, particularly the police. And then it turns out that this happens. This is an eyewitness video that came through from Olu in Imo State. And, you know, you just wonder. When they say a leopard cannot change its spots, you just think, oh boy, could this be one of those classical cases? What is it that needs to be done to ensure that these men, policemen, to say the least, just have their mindset in the right place? Because you always have this scenario, this feeling that it's usually us and them, the men in uniform men in this country and the citizens. So always, you just ask yourself, look, those who you see on the street on a regular basis, and with emphasis on those on the front lines in terms of relating with citizens, it always looks as though they always have an axe to grind. You know, as if, as we say in local parlance, as if we caused their problem. You know, whatever it is that they're going through. Because look, it's sad, it shouldn't be the case. But, well, you understand that the CP there is saying that, well, they will do something about it. But this, what they say, is despicable, it's unacceptable. In fact, I don't think they should still be in the force. But
Oh, yes. I mean, this just shows the culture of oppression which we have. I can't honestly think of a reason why you will do that.
Yeah.
And it's not as though you're doing it in private, it's in public. It's a culture of oppression. If you visit the police stations, mere entering the police stations, I think we had this conversation briefly.
Yeah.
I mean, you know that you're in a different world entirely. The places are not well lit. The environment is dirty, smelly. In fact, you get there and you're met with frowns.
Oh.
You look like a criminal already, and you're like, no,
Oh, boy.
I'm just here to report something. So, I mean, it goes all the way back. So what we're seeing now really shouldn't be any surprise to us. It is sad, it is wrong, it is despicable, like you said. But I wonder why we're shocked. I mean, to whom much is given, they say much is expected. But to whom not much is given, to whom not much attention is given, to whom, I mean, punishment also, I should say that, to whom not much punishment is given, this is what we get to see. Because at the end of the day, I'm sure what was going through their minds is, we'll get protection of some sort. Because if I know that I would be punished, then I wouldn't do that. So it's a lot, really. It's a lot. I can go back to how they're not funded enough, to how, I mean, we've talked about psychological evaluation for men of the police. How much do we do that? I mean, I recall with the disbandment of SARS, they said that they were going to go through some psychological evaluation and all that. How well did that go? Did that even happen? How are we ensuring that we do this for other men on the streets? It's a lot, really. It's beyond funding. I must be honest with you. It's beyond funding. There's a mindset of oppression. You just feel, I need to oppress this person. I'm being oppressed from the top. So how about I pass the oppression down to the person whom I feel I have powers over? It's a lot, really, this morning, but it shouldn't continue.
people who pay their salaries as taxpayers.
Absolutely. So,
You know, guys, each time I see things like this that we're talking about, the only thing that comes to my mind is that monarchical mindset, that unitary mindset, that military mindset that we haven't yet to gravitate out of. Every law enforcement officer, including a civil, what's that, NSCDC officer, once they're wearing a uniform, they feel like they're your lord. I mean, at least that's the perception, again, perception. That's the perception people get. That once you see an officer, even if he's a neighborhood watch officer, just carrying nothing but just ordinary cane. You're petrified. And that has gone on for way too long. To now come from the police, which constitutionally is the lead agency in internal affairs, which, according to the Constitution, even the military is supposed to be subservient to, and you see these kind of activities, then you wonder if we even have a future at all, as far as internal security is concerned. All of these things, only point to one thing. Each time we bring up these issues, some people in the different circles of authority or security apparatus think, why are we nitpicking on these things? But look, it's experience. It's what people experience. What people experience will create perception in the minds of others, and that is their reality. Now, it's just barely 4 months ago that people shouted "End SARS." It was just a few months before that, or a few weeks before that, that the same thing happened in the United States of America when they said, "End police, defund police." This is supposed to communicate something to us that even in the developed world, these things are happening. How much more in a country like ours that is developing?
The irony of this also is the fact that, yes, you see these men, they feel all powerful, but the same men actually take orders from VIPs, in quote. I mean, you see them carrying bags for VIPs. I see people giving orders to policemen. They're not your superiors. They're civilians, in quote, but they give orders to policemen.
You cited it earlier, Kayode, when you said it's not about funding, it's just in the mindset. Chamberlain, you started by talking about the fact that it is a mindset thing. We talk about this communication thing as if it's just one of those things. No, it is not just one of those things. It is the thing. If we don't get communication right, and I'm talking about the entire circle and cycle of communication, we're never going to get it right. Remember when this whole conversation started, when the federal government said we have ended SARS? Question that I asked at the time was, has it been communicated down the ranks? You remember? We raised that issue. Has this been communicated down the ranks? Has it gone as far as Sokoto, as far as Kafanchan, and much more, Imo State, just next door, so to speak, here? And this is where we have now. So
we need to thank the person who sent the video, who recorded it in the first place. So if you see something out there, just find a safe, from a safe distance, record those kind of things and send it. Let people talk about and see these kind of things because they need to stop. I think those are some of the ways that everyone can contribute in showcasing some of these things and see that it becomes history.
And let government not see this as people attacking. It's people
attacking.
The issues.
They were attacking, flogging people.
That's a real attack.
That's the real attack.
You
right
saw
there.
the response of the federal government to the CPI reports. That it's like it's so just.
Look at this, and you know what? Sometimes, look, we ask ourselves, why do this happen? But how do these kind of people get in? Recruiting into our agencies is a challenge. Which I've always talk about a leadership recruitment process. It cuts across board.
Chamberlain,
when politicians put their cronies in there, this is what you get.
You're going too far. How many years ago did we do that report in this organization of the police college? Police college. Just yesterday, remember, we were joking about the prison, the way the prison looks in some other quarters. How much more the police station?
And you want people to volunteer information to
you
the police.
Enter the police station
like
in other climes, Chamberlain. You know the way it felt. And all these things. It's not that we don't know these things. It's just the way it is. And, this whole mindset thing is not just in ones or tens. It's complete.
So, has there been any statement from the IGP's office on this matter?
Well, I think it's been handled at the state level. Definitely some of these things are escalated beyond that.
Okay.
Definitely we need to follow this through.
Yeah. All right, let's go right in and take you through some of the dailies and see what they reflect. We're going to start with Nigerian Tribune this morning. I think you alluded to that, so you could blame me for that. Look at Tribune this morning. Transparency International verdict. Nigeria ranks second most corrupt West African country. Nothing to be proud of, really. We are vindicated, PDP. Report not accurate. Portrayal of facts on the ground. Okay, not accurate portrayal of facts on the ground. Presidency.
It's amazing what a simple comma can do. Change.
Yeah, because I just went into, I didn't see this. Okay, so I just go back and take that again. So that's why importance of rules.
Oh yeah.
Rules just can change a lot of things here, I tell you. And then, let's see, yes, this is the big lead here this morning. Only IGP can approve recall of dismissed unmarried pregnant policewoman. Let's ascribe to the police.
Oh yes, but apparently there's a law. They say there's a law. So how can it be the IGP that would recall if it's in the law? So clearly there's a lot of things we need to sort out, because one of the lawyers fighting for the police woman is saying, well, this law should also apply to policemen who impregnate women rather, and they are married. So it shouldn't just be for women. And they're saying that it's in the law actually. So I'm shocked to see that it's the IGP that can decide what the law will be in this case.
You know, when we say, look, our laws respecters of persons, this is another case in point.
This is one of the reasons why institutions are subservient to individuals.
Well, we'll keep going.
Strong individuals, not strong institutions.
Yeah, we need strong institutions, because if we don't, the scenario that played in you know, the elections over there might have just overrun that country.
Absolutely.
So, well, take a look at what's on the back page. I'm paid to score, not dribble. I know at you. So for those who say he's not a good dribbler, well, how many goals has he scored now? So if you say how many dribbles has this person succeeded or completed, compare it to how many goals, because that's what gets you where. It's the goals.
Reminds you of Van Nistelrooy. Remember that tapping.
Wow.
I mean, he got the goals. He didn't have to. He was in the right place at the right
I'm on
time.
your side. I can control my behavior, unlike others.
Others
Just
meaning
Others
Who knows who these others are?
subjected to interpretations.
Well, that Tribune this morning.
he got a win yesterday anyway. But take a look at
you
the
got
Guardian.
the W.
Take a look
wow.
at the Guardian newspaper. Oh, the lead story, as you would expect, concerns corruption. Stakeholders examine impact of corruption. As Nigeria drops to lowest point on corruption index since 2013, Buhari deserves credit for diminishing corruption, says presidency. War against corruption requires participation of all citizens. So saying that, well, you might have to pick up a copy of The Guardian to find out. So that's the lead story for The Guardian. But right under the big picture, you see petroleum bill faulty. Niger Deltans insists. As community leaders exchange blows at public hearing, agitators dismiss hearing as sham. Tragic. Yet again, we seem to be going down this road. We want holistic participation in oil industries. Residents warn current PIB will cause more problems. It's meant to be passed in April, right? And it seems as though the road is already rough, so...
They're giving us that date. So whatever happens, they will do it.
Okay.
They said they will be thorough about it.
This has been on for almost 20 years or thereabouts. So.
Well, now they've said it, that it will be done with all sense of responsibility
And we look forward
and thoroughness. So, we'll wait. April.
Is
Just
that
a couple
why
of months
the
away.
fight is so strong right now? Just, you know.
There's a fight to pass it.
The Daily Trust newspaper leads with an insecurity story, and quite sad, I must say. Gunmen kill 10 in Katsina, abduct 81 in Niger and Taraba. Dozens injured, cows rustled at Shema village. Kidnappers of Takum youths ask for ransom, and synergy key to ending insecurity, according to an expert. The details you'll find on page 5 of the paper this morning. Right under the picture you see there on the front page, Buhari cautions against ethno-religious prejudices. That story you'll find on page 5. And one of the 3 stories under that one, you'll find host communities fight at reps hearing on PIB. That story is on page 5, find out the details. And Obasanjo nearly retired me from army 21 years ago. Ascribed to former Chief of Army Staff, Buratai. Stories on page 13 of the paper this morning. More Chibok girls escape. That's on page 10. Is that something to cheer?
Oh, that's... Even though there will be Chibok ladies now, but I mean, that's good news.
Escape not released. Well, the details are on the inside pages. That's the Daily Trust today.
Well, take a look at the Vanguard next. Farmers, herdsmen clashes. Southwest governors, Afenifere, blast Sharia council over ranching. So that conversation continues. Wow, look at this. Bandits on rampage kidnap 27 wedding guests, 56 others. Wow. El-Rufai expresses distress, pay praise for the dead. New service chiefs cannot... don't quote him there. But you see, service chiefs, you're unfair to Southeast. Northern elders tell Buhari. This is beneath that, the lead headline. And then Apapa chaos returns as FRSC, LASMA, police cede traffic control to touts. That's what the Vanguard is reporting. You thought it was going to be to maybe another organized agency, but goodness me, to touts.
I think this is something we need to discuss. Because
Why?
if you stay in
Why is this
Lagos, then you
coming?
know that there's a whole world for touts.
Oh, boy.
Honestly. And if we don't discuss this, then we'll keep going around the same circles. Because apparently, they hold a lot of power, or influence, if I should say so. There you go.
PIB free for all at NAS over who speaks for Niger Delta. That's what you find there. And then don't forget, take a look at the back page. You've got Vanguard Sports, Tuchel. I'm not afraid of Chelsea sack. Chelsea to battle Liverpool, Real Madrid for Araba's signature. I thought that he already had a pre-contract agreement with Madrid, but it looks like, I don't know.
Highest
Vanguard
bidder,
today.
honestly.
There you go.
Well, take a look at Nigerian News Direct's lead story, PIB. That's the petroleum industry bill, of course. Senate pushes for reduced cost of crude oil production. I'm glad that, beyond the squabbles and the punches, we can look at the main issues, and not get distracted. Yes, that was a bad taste, really, but, this is something to also look at, and focus on. It's on page 4 of News Direct this morning, and this one quite shocking. AMCON pushing hard to recover 4.4 trillion naira debt nationwide. Just to put it in context, the 2021 budget's deficit is just over 5 trillion. And we have 4.4 trillion debt nationwide. Well,
Who owes who?
apparently, you know what, page 17 of Nigerian News Direct, but it just puts it in context how much, really, if that 4.4 trillion was on the table, then our budget deficit will be reduced to 1 trillion, which means we probably don't have to borrow and go for loans and all that, but I think that's also another strategy. But you know what, Nigerian News Direct has more details for you, quite a number of other stories, but let's leave it there.
A quick look at the Daily Independent. Herdsmen attacks. Southwest governors move to reposition Amotekun. That's the lead of the Daily Independent this morning. How security outfit derailed from original mission. It must not be derailed by Nigerian factor. Subscribe to Afenifere. All of that story continues on page 4, I think, of the Daily Independent this morning. Presidency to TI. Buhari deserves credit for war against corruption. Find that on page 3. PIB, host communities in free-for-all at Reps hearing. Fight was about 10% equity shareholding. Hostcom national chairman has said that one. You may find all of that on the Daily Independent this morning. The story continues on the inside pages. So many others to unpack right there, but I'll leave you to do the picking yourself. Markwe, good morning.
Starting the weekend with Leadership Friday. Good morning, gentlemen, and good morning, Nigerians. You see this one there. New service chiefs. Expectations high in Northwest, Northeast as residents send SOS. Displaced man with 6 wives, 25 children. Narrate ordeal. Well, that is on the front page. 30,000 displaced by bandits, says Katsina government. New service chiefs will perform better. That's according to Matawale. So page 4 is where you'll find details. Or they already have their work cut out for them, because you see right there a number of other stories on security. Insecurity. Federal government to resuscitate airstrips. Yes, on the back of the fact that the roads are very difficult to travel these days. People would rather fly, so they're to resuscitate airstrips perhaps. Page 17 will give you details. And on page 9, 24 travelers kidnapped in Taraba. That's why you have to see the airstrips being resuscitated. The question is, how many people will be able to afford it, especially now that that sector is trying to recover from, the recession occasioned by the lockdown. Or you also see there, I won't allow religious prejudice, partisanship influence my decisions. That's what the president is saying. COVID-19, all Nigerians must be vaccinated. That's according to the federal government. Northern governors agree to take first dose. Well, what effect will that have, gentlemen? I don't know. But let us see how that goes. And that's it for Leadership Friday. But if you quickly look at New Telegraph, you see there, PIB, protect our investments. Oil producers tell National Assembly. Senate seeks cuts in crude production cost. CSOs, host communities brawl, reject bill. Host come, bill puts us at oil firms' mercies. That's on page 2 of the paper. Will it pass like that since there is this hurry now to pass it? Or will their agitations be taken into consideration? Well, let's see what happens on page 2 of the paper. Nigeria's corruption perception ranking worsens. You've seen the story. Presidency faults TI rating. We've been vindicated, says PDP. That's also there. And VAT, federal government rakes in 24.8 billion naira for bank customers. Sector impute rises by 44%. Government redeems $500 million matured Eurobond. Page 4 is where you'll find details. They have a number of other stories at the bottom for you, but we'll leave you to do that yourself. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
I'll take a look at Blueprint next. 48 hours after service chiefs take over, bandits kill 5, abduct 2 kids, 82 others in Kaduna, Niger, Taraba. And the writer says Zamfara receives 7 repentant gunmen, 14 AK-47 rifles. And then you see jet fighters kill scores in Kaduna air raid. People keep asking, where do they get, how do these AK-47s even get into, they get possession of all of these things? Has anybody ever thought about asking those questions? I know they normally tell you, look, if we could, in very quick succession, I mean, as quick as possible, trace funding for what NSAS protesters, how come we can't follow the money and find out who are the people sponsoring Boko Haram terrorists? I mean, oh boy. Because it was almost like a world record tracing of that, of the NSAS protest. But now, it's another world record inability to trace the sponsors of Boko Haram. So world record at both ends. Oh boy.
And then you ask, has it been traced? And then maybe
nobody saying anything?
That's another question.
The last government told us they were going to name the names of sponsors
yes.
of Boko Haram, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, we're waiting for that list, by the way. But,
that's Blueprint today.
well, quickly, the Daily Times leads with something quite different, and it puts issues in perspective this morning. 90 million Nigerians to fall below extreme poverty line. 90 million.
Whoa.
Our population is just above 200 million. So that's almost half of the nation.
What happens to that 100 million that was supposed to take out of poverty? 120 million, because after that 100 million, the VP then said 20 million.
But it's over 10 years.
Over 10 years.
So it's meant to be like 12 million per year.
So it's 100 or 120 million.
So we should have done at least 20-something million by now. We should reduce this to 70 million. But you know what? It's not that easy, right? So the government needs to,
toss
of
it
course,
to
wade into this.
business desk.
So yeah, you see this one, FG targeting 70% COVID vaccination coverage. So is that all Nigerians must be vaccinated or 70% of Nigerians?
Once or twice.
Depends on which of the vaccines, really.
Okay.
That's it for the Daily Times.
Yeah, and wraps up a look at some of the dailies here this morning. We're back in a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. Yes, talking about COVID-19 and some attendant matters. We've got Dr. Mukhtar Mohammed, who is the National Incident Manager for Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, who joins us via Zoom. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, if I could just start off from, one of the much talked about matter, which happens to be the signing of this law by the president. And just going through that yesterday, that we did. But if you could talk to us about this, I know that, the information is out there. The PTF did express a lot of frustration as to how those protocols were not being complied to as much as they would like to see, to the extent that it will prevent a lot of unnecessary spread, not that there's any necessary one, of COVID-19. Just thinking, was the PTF, what kind of role did they play? Were they the ones who suggested, look, we need to come up with a law to ensure that this compliance happens across board?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chamberlain, and good morning, viewers. Thank you for having me on this program. You're absolutely right. We have had some level of frustration regarding the level of compliance to COVID-19 protocols in the country. We know that not only in Nigeria, but in almost every country also, there is some level of enforcement that is made by government, and also to ensure that people actually do this, follow these protocols and follow this compliance. This is not really with the intention of trying to put people under pressure, or for the government to destabilize, or put some undue pressure on people. But really, it is for the public good. It is to protect individuals, to protect communities, and also to protect Nigeria as well. So PTF really played a vital role in initiating this discussion. It is not only PTF, but we had extensive discussion with state governors also. It will interest you to know that the PTF regularly interacts with state governors regarding the state of COVID-19 in the country. And it is from this discussion that this enforcement issue evolved, and it was developed, and the president signed and assented to it.
So the regulation is out now. We had one for 2020, yes, by the way, where the president ordered lockdown, as it will seem, in Lagos, the FCT and all. But in terms of communication now, we had a conversation with Professor Tomori yesterday, and he was talking about persuasion instead of this sort of regulation, that persuasion would achieve much. Based on the feelers you've gotten from people, do you think people are excited, or people are looking forward to be a part of this regulations which have been put out? Because, you need people to win this fight against COVID-19. So what are the feelers you're getting?
So the feelers, actually, you'll agree with me, even from you, the media. We've had several questions at the weekly presidential task force briefing. Journalists have always asked us, when are we going to start enforcement, and PTF going to start doing this enforcement? We've had it also from people that you have interviewed on different platforms, people asking that there needs to be some level of enforcement. We were a little cautious and circumspect in trying to come out with this law, because we know that the current provisions on ground, can be legally challenged if we don't take due consultation and also follow the due process. So even within the public, we've had people reporting. We have an email where people report to say that this public place, this church, these places, people don't wear masks. The people come out and interact publicly. We have had people who complain from as far as Port Harcourt about public transportation, where the owners of the vehicle actually did not observe social distancing, and everyone was not wearing masks, and they traveled all the way down to Abuja. So I think it is coming from all directions. We know it is the right thing to do, and I think the public also, those that understand, believe that we need to do something. However, as you rightly mentioned, the experience from the previous lockdown is not something that is good. We are fully aware of the economic and social difficulties that Nigerians have come to experience during that period. And therefore, we would not really want that to happen. And also, when we talk about enforcement, there are multiple steps. First of all, we have to amplify our sensitization, make sure that people are adequately informed, make sure that the communication reaches as many people as possible, and then we will start putting pressure and persuasion before we start making the prosecution. So it's going to be step by step.
Well, Doctor, perhaps a good place to start would be even the law enforcement agencies themselves, because according to the regulation, the lead agency of the enforcement, according to the president, assigned in that protection regulation is the police. And if you look around, many people, I'm pretty sure that some of them are going to put some tweets on our handle right now, that they would tell you that some of the people who are supposed to enforce these regulations themselves do not live by them. They don't wear the masks. They don't, and there was a viral video of a customs officer who refused to wear a mask in public and was trying to attend to someone. And the person said, "Until you wear your mask, I'm not going to attend to you." And of course, it became an issue. So then the question would be, how government agencies themselves, officials of government, how are they internalizing this, the whole idea of wearing masks, observing these NPIs, as the medical profession tells us? So question to you then, as National Incident Manager, would be, what kind of conversations are you having with ministries, departments, and agencies so that people can see that the leadership is complying, and consequently they themselves should follow? Because the people see people like the police and the rest of them not wearing these things, it sends some kind of signal, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. We have taken, at least a snapshot of what is going on in the town. We have visited ministries, parastatals, we have visited public places, we've gone to the markets. And certainly, yes, only few people you will observe wearing masks, and only a few public places you will see where there is some level of enforcement, at least during the temperature check, and also turning back people who do not wear a mask. But even the places that were doing this, some time ago, now if you look at it, they have actually relaxed that enforcement or persuasion that they are doing. So yeah, you are absolutely right. But they say charity begins at home. Therefore, with this regulation now, we are taking our conversation up with security agencies. They are aware of the role that they are going to play. And certainly, when you are responsible for enforcing a particular law, certainly you yourself have to come clean of it. So we're having this high-level discussion with security agencies. We're taking it with different ministries. And as a rule, even that communication has been provided. You are aware that we have reduced the number of staff going to the ministries. We've directed all ministries to also ensure that they institute these temperature checks at the entrance of their ministries. We've also instructed them that no mask, no entry policy should be enforced in all government offices. And we are working with the state governments as well to ensure that this evolves. So it is really a gradual step, but surely we're going to get there.
Still staying with the federal government and the ministries that you talked about, it'll be good to find out from you what kind of communication you are having with those ministries. Because in about 11 days from now, the deadline for people to get their national identity numbers will end. And as we speak, you can almost guess what the lookout is at the various NIMSI offices all over the nation, all struggling to get their name to beat that deadline. So what kind of conversation would you say is going on with such a ministry as that in charge of communication and digital economy, who put out this deadline? One would wonder if there was any kind of conversation or consideration of these regulations that you have put out.
So actually, the problem, we have discussed that issue and we've had that conversation with the Ministry of Communication. The problem really is not about the deadline, and it's not more of the NIN registration itself. It is about the frenzy and the disorderliness that has been reported in most places where this registration is going on. The regulation we've provided is that, yes, the NIN registration is very vital, it's very important to the security of this country, which is of paramount importance. However, it can be done under COVID-19 protocol. We have talked to them, and we've talked to also the places where this activities are carried out, that people must wear their mask and there should be some social distancing. In some of the places, really, you can see that they are trying to observe it. But I think it is the pressure, the deadline approaching, and people getting anxious, that makes the places to be rowdy and to cause that violation of the protocol. So we encourage them to ensure that these protocols are implemented in these places, and they provide more points where these services can be provided, so that Nigerians do not have to break the protocol and put themselves at the risk of getting infected.
I think that last point you made was the main issue, because what our reporters saw at different parts of the country is not just about the anxiety of them wanting to meet the deadline, but the inadequacy of registration points that they were. They didn't have enough. And then if you're given that deadline and people don't have where else to go get it, people have been chasing this for years. And so they need to sort their own end out. But now that these regulations are out, we'll be looking to see how they conduct themselves moving forward. But when you talked about having a conversation with the states, that they seem to be on the same page with you on this one, could you share with us, if you can, what is it about, because we know we don't have a perfect, or at least the kind of transport system in the country that we'd like to see, in terms of that organization, such that they can observe all of this, because in some states have said it's going to be challenging enforcing this thing in that transport sector. Did they assure you, the states, that this can work?
Well, they have all previewed the regulation. They have all looked at it and edited. And it is after we've circulated to all the states that this final document was now submitted to Mr. President for accept. So I would say they are aware of the contents. And from the discussion we are having, the states are totally along with us. We know that there may be very level of enforcement or even level of conviction regarding the measures or the intensity of the measures that need to be taken in public places. But you'll agree with me, we have to start somewhere. If you look at the number of cases that are coming from Lagos, Abuja, Kaduna, Plateau, and some other states, really that is not acceptable. The virus is really going around. It is really becoming more and more, the transmission rate is becoming much higher. The hospitalization rate is becoming higher. Mortality we are getting from this COVID-19 is becoming higher. We are putting our vulnerable population, at a very high risk. And for any responsible government, we have to take serious steps to ensure that Nigerians and the public in general are protected and are not really at any increased risk of getting the infection.
Yeah, much as we like to see that reduced, but could you share with us, I mean, what's the scenario that, the PTF and then the drafters, what did they visualize in terms of implementing this in our markets in the country?
Absolutely. So actually what we visualize is that number one, we do not want to close markets. And for now, we do not even want to reduce the number of market days as was done during the first phase of ease of lockdown. We want our economy to work. We want people to earn their livelihood. And we want economic activities to continue. But this has to be in a regulated fashion where we do not provide an increased risk for people transacting their businesses. So certainly we would want to see a market where before you enter that market, your temperature will be taken. There is somebody stationed there to measure your body temperature. If your temperature is above 38 degrees centigrade, you will be turned back or advised to seek health assistance or linked directly to where you will have a test done. If your temperature is negative, then they will also ensure that you have a face mask, which is actually the first thing. If you don't have a face mask, you'll not even be allowed to come near the gate of the market. And then people can now go into the market, transact their business, and then come out. And we also envision to see where the market authorities themselves become responsible. They ensure that all these measures are put in place and people that are not complying are quickly reported or taken out of the marketplace. And we also want to see the law enforcement agencies working side by side with the necessary stakeholders. So in this case, the market associations or the market regulators, to ensure that these protocols are complied with. Where we have places where these protocols are grossly violated, then the law enforcement officers know what to do. If we have people who are not wearing masks despite all these measures, then they are liable to prosecution or to fine. This is the vision that we want to see, and not only the markets, but all public places. This includes supermarkets, event centers, parks, and so on and so forth.
It's quite interesting you say this is what you envision, because when you talk about, those regulations for public markets, I mean, you wonder, is it for supermarkets or the mile 12 kind of markets, the everyday markets? But like you said, it's something you envision, and we should actually work towards that because that is the minimum standard. But you talked about enforcement, enlightenment, and I'd like you to elaborate on that if you can, because we need to understand the timelines. Because for a lot of people, they think, is a regulation in operation yet? When will it come into force? But since you say that there will be some sort of enlightenment, communication before enforcement, one wonders, how is that going to work? So are you saying maybe for the next 1 month, you will do some, enlightenment and communication campaigns so that people will know what this is about and what is expected of them before enforcement kicks in? So help us understand the timeline.
Well, when you have a regulation that is signed, certainly all government agencies would work towards seeing the implementation of this regulation. But each state is going to take its own process and move it forward. And like I told you, it is not that today people will start being prosecuted. It has to be step by step. The initial, activities will involve what we are doing now, which is communicating this regulation to the public, and which is being taken at a very high level now. And also to commence this persuasion process. So people will now be certainly asked, where is your face mask? Please go back home, get a face mask before you come out in the public. So these are the gradual steps that are going to start, and each state may probably set its own timeline But for us in the PTF, we're just working with the states to ensure that people understand the process, the law enforcement agencies themselves understand it, and to ensure what is really of importance to us is to ensure that this process is actually implemented in a very professional manner, so that we do not have any abuse of the process or people taking advantage of the process, and to ensure that the public also understands the reasons behind this protection, health protection regulation.
Okay, if we could just do this, quickly. I want you to also talk on the lockdown. I mean, you began by speaking to that. So there's a lot of talk about whether there will be a lockdown or not. And I just want to know what is the thinking in the PTF regarding that? Because we've had almost a year, 11 months, to gather data about the infections, the trends, and what have you. So I'm just wondering, rather than have a blanket lockdown and say, well, we have a national lockdown or a statewide lockdown, how well have you been able to use data gathered such that you know that, okay, these are the kinds of people that are prone to spreading it? Okay, maybe people in middle income areas or low income areas or high income areas, or people that work in enclosed spaces, or people that work in markets, such that we can have targeted lockdowns other than a blanket lockdown. And I know you've had a meeting with some, data organization in recent times, but how well are we using that data such that we actually act based on data?
Okay, so actually that is exactly what we did. We have been analyzing the data, and we've been looking at the geographic areas that have been affected. We've been looking at the different age groups. We've been looking at the professions. And certainly, as you mentioned, even if we are going to have a lockdown, it's not going to be a total national lockdown. Just a couple of weeks back, we looked at the data and we identified the hotspot LGA. So we look at the country by local government areas. Mostly the areas affected are the urban areas, the urban local governments in Lagos, in Abuja, in Kaduna, Plateau, and even in most other states, it is the urban LGAs that are involved. So if we're going to have any restriction, it will be it will be more emphasized in these areas. And even with this health regulation now, the enforcement we're looking at, it will vary in severity. And certainly the urban areas are the areas that are most affected. That is why you have most of the super spreader events. And that is where we are going to target. So we've actually analyzed that, and we're advising the states also based on the data that we have, that these are the focus areas where this transmission is more than in others.
Well, Doctor, one issue, of course, that the whole world is looking at now to solve this problem permanently or as significantly as possible is vaccines. And conversations have been ongoing about that severally, about our capacity to store, our capacity to procure, and so many other issues like that. Just exactly where are we on that one? On the one hand, procurement. On the other hand, communicating it to people for people to accept, to take it, because that's also a big issue. Tell us about our progress on that so far.
So certainly we are preparing. All government agencies have been mobilized, and they are working day and night to ensure that Nigeria is prepared for the vaccination. But that is not to say that all efforts are only on vaccination. Our most important effort is on the containment, like I mentioned, containment and also mitigation. That is to prevent the spread of the infection, and also to ensure that those that have been infected have been adequately isolated and been taken care of. So the vaccination, certainly it is going to come, and it is really the current age discussion in the COVID world. And Nigeria is actually doing its best now, trying to ensure that we secure enough doses for Nigerians, and also working towards ensuring that our storage capacity is improved. But most importantly, communicating this message to Nigerians. In your preview, you mentioned about the meeting yesterday with northern religious leaders and the traditional leaders. So these are the sort of activities that we have focused on to make sure that people who have a voice in the community actually understand what we are doing. Because it's very important to have both political, religious, traditional, and whatever leadership you have galvanized in this
All right.
direction for
Okay.
people in the first place to understand where we are.
Dr. Mukhtar, sorry to jump in, but we need to wrap this up. If you can do this in about 30 seconds, could you tell us when are we receiving the first batch of the vaccine, and are you looking to, is it going to be mandatory for everybody to be vaccinated?
Yes, so our intention is really to have we have profiled people, and we have what is the first priority group. It's like the medical health workers who are the frontline health workers. They are the first priority to get the vaccine. And we hope, based on what we have been communicated to, that we are likely to have the vaccines before the end of this quarter, before the end of the first quarter.
Is it going to be mandatory for everybody to take it? I didn't get that part.
Well, there are certainly going to be exceptions, people that have conditions that will not allow them to take the vaccines. But our goal is really to target 70 to 80% of Nigerians to be vaccinated.
All right, then, Dr. Mukhtar Mohammed, National Incident Manager for the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
All right, then, we will be back and focus on our next subject matter in a moment. Stay with us. Well, the presidency believes the Buhari administration deserves some credit for what it describes as diminishing corruption in the public service, describing the report, which we just played, as an inaccurate portrayal of the facts on the ground. There was a statement put up by Mr. Garba Shehu, spokesman to the president. He says they will continue to support prevention, enforcement, public education, and enlightenment activities of anti-corruption agencies. Now, part of that statement also reads, we are currently analyzing the sources of data used in arriving at the latest Transparency International's report on Corruption Perceptions Index in Nigeria, since by their own admission, they don't gather their own data. Mr. Aura Rafsanjani, as you've seen that, joins us this morning. He's the head Transparency International office in Nigeria. Good morning, and thank you for joining us again today. Well, statement from Mr. Shehu was saying, all right, well, when he says, well, TI don't collect their own data, third-party information, and already saying, look, there's a level of credibility. I mean, there'll be huge questions about this is just perception, but not necessarily reality. That seems to be the message they are communicating from the presidency. How do you react to that?
Well, first and foremost, I think, some people have no conscience, and some people did not mean well for the government they are even serving. It is not surprising to be hearing some of this dismissal and some of this statement. I think any right-thinking person that, really genuinely, believes in this country and want to help the country to move forward, from this systematic corruption we face ourselves, will be able to tell the truth and also advise government and then do the right thing. Now, you don't need Transparency International to tell you that Nigerians are facing terrible corruption in their daily life. If you want to get admission today, you have to pay a bribe. If you want to get a job in government, they are selling job offers, you have to pay a bribe. If you want a promotion, you have to pay a bribe. If you want your entitlement as a worker, you have to pay a bribe. Everything in this country is about bribe. So Nigerians are facing this terrible thing. And even government institution itself, they conducted together with the UNODC, that is the Bureau of National Statistics, they conducted survey to show the prevalence of corruption, which they say in their report, police come as top of the most corrupt, institution in Nigeria. ICPC conducted, and they show that there's a prevalence of corruption. Even EFCC every day is arresting people, because of the corruption. So, recently, government also suspended the Ibrahim Magu, the former EFCC former EFCC Ibrahim Magu, for allegation of not accounting for the recovered asset. So this is something that every day, you look at National Assembly, even on this palliative, some people, they came to even testify how they share Nigerian money. So if you have conscience and you are really serious about helping Buhari administration to succeed, in the fight against corruption, you should stop making caricature of yourself. You should actually, like what we have seen in other countries, the countries that have been ranked or that they have deficiency in terms of fighting corruption, they sit down and come up with strategy on how to combat this corruption. And look at the sources that actually conducted, or that gathered this information. Shamelessly, Nigeria is even members of this institution. For example, you have World Bank country policy and institutional assessment, which Nigeria is a member of it. You have World Economic Forum Executive Opinion Survey. Nigeria is a member of this. You have World Justice Project Rule of Law. Nigeria is, part of this. You have Varieties of Democracy Project. You have Global Insight Country Risk Guide, and several other sources that, this rating was conducted. So these are credible, globally accepted and respected, institution. It's not one, group that is not known. It is groups that Nigerian government itself is part and parcel of. And look at the corruption that is going on even in the procurement. Recently, the Abacha loot that we all fought to make sure that the Abacha loot money come back to Nigeria. When they are appointing the consultant for the project, they again plot the public procurement law, and that is now being in court, disgracing even the country. No country is going to return money when they see corruption in the process. So I think people, in government who are the spokesperson of government, if they really want government to succeed, they need to be honest, sincere, and agree that, yes, we actually have challenges and that we need to deal with these challenges in a manner that we can combat corruption. But to come and dismiss it, or to come and blackmail or abuse us to say that characters behind the transparency, who are the characters? I am the head of Transparency International. I am not a politician, and I am not associated with any politician in this country. And if there is anyone, let him come, or let her come and say that, CISLA, Transparency in Nigeria, is linked to them.
Mr. Awad, let me read the statement for you. Mr. Shehu did put up a statement. He says, we have repeatedly challenged Transparency International to provide indices and statistics of its own to justify its sensational and baseless rating on Nigeria and the fight against corruption. We expect them to come clean and desist from further rehashing old tales.
Like I said, some of them, they don't even know what they are saying. They are contradicting themselves. These institutions that they are doing this survey for Nigeria, Nigeria itself is a member of those institutions. Nigerian own agency, National Bureau of Statistics, conducted survey to show the prevalence of corruption in Nigeria. ICPC have done that. So you don't need Transparency International to tell you that there's a corruption in Nigeria. This is what everybody is going. Me and you and other ordinary citizens in the country, they are facing that. And even the government on its own admission, is sending away people from, for example, they suspended Magu because they say that Magu has not accounted for the, asset they have recovered. And now, let me tell you, the domestic asset that have been recovered, where are the golds? Where are the jewelries? Where are the estates? Where are the expensive cars? All these things have disappeared, no accountability. So instead of dismissing the fact that there's a corruption in Nigeria and asking TI to give you, more evidence, you are just wasting Nigerian time because you know that you are not honest, you are not sincere. So some of these people in government, if Buhari is actually aware of what they are even doing, he will have fired them because they are actually undermining the President Muhammad Buhari from his agenda in the fight against corruption. If only they are coming to say that there's no corruption.
Well, Mr. Rafsanjani, you also said in the statement you put out that there were the statement wasn't about any specific evidences of corruption, but that of perception. Perhaps that is why the presidency is saying, what are the sources of your own data that are domestic and not just, global and all of that. So when you talk about perception of, as opposed to the evidences of corruption itself, perhaps that's the angle from which the presidency is speaking. How do you react to that?
But like I mentioned to you, these are the sources. These are the sources for the Corruption Perception Index for Nigeria, which, interestingly, Nigeria is members of most of these sources. Unless Nigeria is saying that, the World Bank capacity policy and institutional assessment is a liar. Unless Nigerian, Gorbachev, they are saying that, World Economic Forum executive opinion, survey is a liar. Unless they are telling us that World Justice Project Rule of Law Index, what they are coming up is a lie. Unless they are telling us the Variety of Democracy Project, what they are saying is a lie. Look, these are global, reputable, respected, well acknowledged institutions that are doing this, Okay. And Transparency International, is not concocting anything. And like I said, Nigerian, government on institution also conducted, survey to show the prevalence of corruption. So if TI is even talking about perception, Nigerians are saying that, look, it's not perception, it's actually real corruption we are facing because the extortion, and the corruption that we are seeing on daily basis is overwhelming. And instead for this spokesperson to advise the president and suggest policy and program that can help reduce corruption, they are busy dismissing it. I think if Buhari is aware, he will appear some of these people because they are undermining him, they are undermining the government, they are also betraying Nigerian people. Buhari administration promised to fight corruption, and these people are coming to actually, because some of them, they are actually beneficiary of corruption. That is the only justification for why they are hiding this. Otherwise, Nigerians are facing terrible corruption in their life. You cannot get admission in the university.
Now, all these issues that you have raised, quite significant, one might say, but then to a large extent, many times when we talk about corruption, we look to the government. But then from some of the issues, some of the examples you have also cited of people going through systemic and pervasive corruption at different points in their lives, what then can be done? You have talked about, legal frameworks to do all of these. Usually our attention is on fighting corruption as opposed to preventing corruption. Which should we prioritize?
Well, actually, if you really want to have a successful fight against corruption agenda, definitely you need to have the necessary enabling legal framework, to be able to do that. There are absence of some legal framework that are making the fight against corruption in Nigeria impossible. And in some instances, you have some legal framework, but they are not being complied with, they are not being respected. For example, we have deficiency in having a legal framework, in the area of whistleblowing. You cannot fight corruption successfully without whistleblowing protection regime. Secondly, you are focusing on access recovery, and then you don't have legal framework on how to manage the recovered asset. That is why the assets are recovered and Nigerian didn't see anything. The assets are recovered and get looted again. Domestic assets that have been recovered in this country are so huge, but nobody is going to give you, information or data on where these, assets are. Again, you have, laws that are supposed to help to fight corruption. They are not being operationalized. For example, you have freedom of information. Many government institutions, they don't respect it. You have, for example, Public Procurement Act 2007 is not being respected. Currently now, there's a dispute because of the corruption in the procurement process that is giving the country a bad name, where consultants were supposed to be selected, and they refuse to follow the public procurement provision. This is not good for the country. Look at the racketeering in the passport office. you want to get passport or renew passport, both in Nigeria and outside Nigeria, you see the extortion and the corruption going on there, racketeering everywhere. And some people are now sitting in their comfort offices saying that there's no problem with corruption in Nigeria. Nigerians are facing this terrible corruption.
Part of the government's thinking from the statement Mr. Gabasho released is that the examination that TI carried out in their 2019 report showed that 60% of their data was collected from businesses and other entities with issues bordering on transparency and ease of doing business at the ports. And he says, look, the country's economy is bigger than the seaports that we have. Just suggesting that, look, this is just a minuscule, very small part that you covered and made it 60% of your report.
See, an honest and sincere, committed, patriotic person who speaks for government should have said, okay, if there are challenges in this area, how do we do to combat this problem? Not to come and dismiss it, because Nigeria, whether you dismiss it or not, Nigerians are facing it. Look at the insecurity. What is spoiling the insecurity is corruption, So look, I think there's need to have sanity. And I just hope and pray that the president will wake up to be able to deal decisively with the people who he have entrusted, in his government that are betraying him. The fight against corruption is not working very well. These are facts. And, we need to do everything possible as a responsible patriotic citizen to support our government to block those leakages. Every day, you wake up, from TV to radio to newspaper to community, you hear corruption, you hear corruption, you hear corruption. And some people in government are coming to dismiss that. Look, internationally, our image has been terribly damaged because they have transformed this corruption to even our embassies, to even our foreign services. Look, we need to be more honest and more serious. National Assembly every day is holding, every now and then is holding public hearing, people coming to testify how corrupt the system is, how they are undermining corruption. And then again, fight against corruption cannot stop in Abuja. You have 36 states in the federation. You have over 777 local governments. They don't even know that the fight against corruption exists because of the absence of, operationalizing national strategy on the fight against corruption. We need to encourage states to adopt, and replicate EFCC and ICPC in their state because corruption in local government and the state is very intense and it's happening. Nobody is exposing those things because of fear, of some powerful people at that tier too. So look, when you really want to do this, you have to, know that you are actually putting Nigerians at more risk, when you come to dismiss that there's no corruption and that it is perception. Nigerians are saying it's not even perception, it is reality because they are facing this extortion and corruption on daily basis.
Well, I'm glad you even mentioned in that report, whistleblower policy, ensuring protection for those who give vital information regarding the fight against corruption. Now, this report is peculiar, as you will agree, in terms of its methodology. I mean, it's even called the Corruption Perceptions Index. But just before we get into some specifics about the methodology, how the data was gathered, who was spoken to, who was not spoken to, during the course of this conversation, you have used statements like, if Buhari is aware, if the president is aware. In fact, just moments ago, you said, if the president will wake up. I just want you to clear the air. Specifically, when you use that term, when you say that, what are you trying to pass across, really, especially regarding the president?
The message I'm trying to pass across is that if the president knows that some of the people he has appointed, they are not actually helping him to fight corruption like he wanted or like he promised to do in Nigeria, he would have nothing to do with those people because they are actually helping to undermine, his, agenda in the fight against corruption. So if the president, really is aware, I don't see how president will keep such kind of people because he had made several commitments that he is there to fight corruption, and he alone, he cannot do. He has to do with right team. And from what I'm seeing, many people who will come to say there's no corruption in Nigeria or that they will dismiss what Nigerians are passing through, as a result of the consequences of corruption. The president, I believe, he would have sent them away because they are not helping him. What we have seen in other countries, like Europe, America, Asia, and other African countries, what they do, their countries, when we send out this report, what they do, they say, okay, where are the areas that we have deficiency? Where are the areas that we can improve? They sit down and work with non-state actors to block those leakages. But in the case of Nigeria, some people who claim to be speaking for government, they will come and dismiss, no, there's no corruption. Because obviously, if they mean well for the government, they will not come in with this approach. They will come
Mr.
with solution-solving
Rafsanjani,
approach.
how is it possible, how is it possible that a president will not be aware of the goings-on in his administration? Really, that beats the mind. How is that even possible?
Well, I mean, you are even in the best position to note so many lacuna, so many problems that is obviously giving us the impression that the president is not aware. Because if he is very much aware, we believe that decisive action will have been taken. So if you have a trusted team to work with you, you don't need to be everywhere. It is that trusted, committed, honest, sincere, patriotic team that you have in your government in various places. Those are the ones that will represent you and do the right thing and carry out your dream, your policy, your commitment, your promises that you made to the nation. But if those team members, they don't even believe in what you are doing, you would have seen that there's a problem. You will have seen that the president will not get the necessary information that is required because he is one person. He cannot be everywhere. He has to have trusted, committed, qualified, competent team that will help him to be able to deal with issues, the problems, and the issues he has actually campaigned for and promised Nigerians to deal with. But when you don't have those right persons that can actually help, implement the agenda of the president,
right,
definitely you a failure.
Okay, Mr. Rafsanjani, let's see if we could just talk about the methodology in specifics now, because looking at the, which was also put out by Transparency International, says that the CPI scores and ranks, it ranks countries really based on how corrupt a country's public sector is perceived by experts and business executives. But it also says that you didn't factor citizens' perceptions or experience of corruption, tax fraud, and some other areas. It talks about what you focused on, but not on citizens' perception. Basically, citizens were not spoken to. And also, looking at the document put out by TI, it says that it is not a verdict, that's talking about the CPI, on the levels of corruption of entire nations or societies or of their policies or the activities of their private sector, which tries to clear the air, saying that what we have put out, we're not saying, in fact, it's said specifically that when we say that this country ranks last, it doesn't mean it's the most corrupt country. But based on the data that we have gotten from those, parties, that's why we put out this perception. So would you still say that this is a verdict on the government's fight against corruption? Because clearly that's what the government is internalizing this as.
Well, that is why I said, if only the government official cool down to understand what we are trying to communicate, they would have helped themselves, from all this dismissal and reputal and blackmail and name calling. Look, this report is focusing on public sector perception on how people who have come to do also business in the country, all this expert group that I mentioned, the World Bank, Economic, World Forum on juries, and all of the groups that I had highlighted earlier on, if only government understand that these are groups that they give their own perception, their own verdict. There are different methodologies that you can do. Every social science student knows and understands different methodology, different approaches that you can apply, to come to your own results. In this case, what we are saying is that these are groups that they look at democracy operation in Nigeria. These are groups that they look at our justice system in the country. These are groups that they look at how, financial transaction happens in the country. These are groups that they are looking at the totality of the public sector on how corruption is being perceived, in those places. That's what TI is talking about. It's not even assessing the entire government, program on fighting corruption. That is why I say they are jumping the thing. But in addition to this, Nigerians are even saying that, look, what even TI is talking, TI is not actually even, TI is only talking about perception. But what Nigerians are saying that they are actually facing real corruption. So Garba Shehu and the like of him should go and explain to Nigerians why corruption, that is killing them. That as a result of that, we are the capital of poverty in the world. As a result of that, kidnapping and armed robbery has taken over. You should go and tell them that
I think
there's
they say that
those kind of problems.
In the days ahead, the technical unit on governance research, so they will come up with their data. So I think we'll all have an opportunity to see further what their thinking is about all of this. And we do thank you most kindly for joining us this morning. Alwa Rafsanjani, Head, Transparency International Office in Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so coming up next will be a conversation about the surface chiefs. We'll find out who, why, what. In a moment, don't go away.
The abduction of more than 340 boys in December of last year at a school in the president's home state threw the nation into déjà vu before the boys were released. Averting a recurrence of such daring criminality may be top priority. Nigeria has been facing prolonged violent clashes between farmers and cattle herders, and the conflicts have been triggered by disputes over land, water resources, and what grazing patterns should be adopted. From the north to the south, the seed of discord between farmers and herders keeps sprouting, with the police proving almost incapable of tackling such security complexities. The new service chiefs are expected to consolidate on the wins already recorded and break new ground. The military has made some gains with aerial bombardment, but there are also largely no boots on the ground to secure conquered territories. There are problems of piracy on the waterways and restiveness in the Niger Delta. A proper handshake between the old and the new guard may help in sustaining the gains.
Welcome back. Well, yes, we'll be talking about the service chiefs now. Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, joins us next. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, statements credited to you say that, as far as you're concerned, they've been nominated and not appointed. But if you go through the texts from the presidency, Mr. Femi Adesina, for instance, tweeted that the president has appointed. And then the president has since met with the service chiefs. We've seen the outgoing ones hand over, in fact, no statements at the moment, unless I missed it, from the National Assembly about procedural, what needs to be done procedurally. So in light of all of these things, what do you think we should be doing at this time?
Well, the whole essence of democracy, presidential system of government is to ensure that there are checks and balances. Section 218 of the Constitution, which empowers the president to appoint service chiefs, equally empowers the National Assembly to make laws with respect to the exercise of the powers by the president. And that was why Section 18 of the Armed Forces Act provides that both chambers of the National Assembly shall approve the appointments of service chiefs. These laws were interpreted by the Federal High Court in the case of Festus Keyamo versus the President of Nigeria. And the decision was rendered in 2018 by the retired Justice Adamu Bello. The government did not appeal that judgment. In that case, the court held that by the combined effect of Section 218 of the Constitution and Section 18 of the Armed Forces Act, the National Assembly shall approve or confirm the appointment of service chiefs. This time around, it hasn't been done, and I want to believe that it was an oversight. We had that problem between 1999 and 2008 when Mr. Keyamo, SAN, approached the court for interpretation. And of course, this is the law today because there was no appeal against it by the federal government. With profound respect to Mr. Additional, I would rather go with Mr. Festus Keyamo, who had confirmed the judgment, who had confirmed the state of the law, and now advised and said I was sure that the proper thing would be done by the government, of which is a part. So
you know,
that's the law.
The challenge for some is that, you know, Mr. Keyamo is in this current government. The vice president is equally knowledgeable about legal matters, and many would have thought that before all of these procedures, rather than you know, give room for this kind of commentary, they might have advised or should have advised that the right things be done procedurally.
Well, this has been a regular phenomenon. We have had all manners of appointments. Some were even appointed from their grave, you know. So and it's been a regular, you know, embarrassing situation. And again, as I said, I didn't write the law, but this is the judgment of the court. And I'm not sure whether there were views of people in government were sought before this appointment were announced. You know, we have been in this battle for almost 3 years, where people have drawn the attention of the president to the fact that these appointments, you know, this is the way they should be made. And I've also used this forum to also advise the National Assembly to stop begging for replacement of service chiefs, but to also insist on their own power. Because if I'm to approve, if the National Assembly has the power to approve the appointment, you know, the National Assembly equally has power to endorse any extension of the terms of some service chief, and that is the law. But again, we are operating in an atmosphere of impunity. Sometimes it's not deliberate. Sometimes it's due to oversight or lack of the position of the law or lack of familiarity with judgments of the court on certain matters, you know. But I'm sure, you know, now that it's been pointed out, you know, and I've made the judgments available to all and sundry, I'm quite sure that the proper thing will be done, because anybody can go to court and challenge the appointments. And, you know, the court will have to be bound by some previous decision on this matter. So that is why we need to move very speedily so that these gentlemen who have been appointed can properly assume their duties and proceed to prosecute the war on terror. You know, so that's my one. And it goes for the appointment of the Inspector General of Police. I was embarrassed 2 days ago when about 2 governors in the Southwest went to Abuja, and I think it was Governor Makinde that was pleading for deployment of mobile policemen in Oyo State. Again, I've advised our governors have to appreciate that police powers in Nigeria are to be jointly exercised by the president and the governors. They are not the exclusive powers of the president. Section 216 of the Constitution provides that before an Inspector General of Police can be appointed or removed, the president shall consult the Nigerian Police Council. The Nigerian Police Council is made up of the president as the chairman, the Inspector General of Police, the chairman of the Police Service Commission, and the 36 state governors. So in a 39-member, you know, council, 36 are governors. But the governors have abdicated their constitutional duties to the president. It shouldn't be so. So the Constitution says the Nigerian Police Council shall administer, organize, and supervise the Nigerian police force. So if you are going to have more police personnel in your state, that request should be made to the council and not to the president or to the Police Service Commission. And recently the Inspector General of Police and the Police Service Commission had a legal tussle over the number of policemen to appoint, or who was to appoint the policemen, whether it should be the IG or the Police Service Commission. That legal battle is in the Supreme Court now. And the Nigerian Police Council has not said a word. And it should be his policy on the number of policemen that will serve in every state in the country. So we need to familiarize ourselves with the provisions of the Constitution.
I mean, after all, you know governors fund the police in their states time and again. So, I mean, it's only fair to have them also have some level of authority. But back to the talk about the service chiefs. So help us understand, in the eye of the law, as at this morning, what is the state of the service chiefs? Because, I mean, we've seen the former Chief of Army Staff, for example, hand over to the new Chief of Army Staff. So are they service chiefs? Are they not? What can they do now? What can they not do in the eye of the law, that is?
Well, as far as the law is concerned, they have been nominated by the president for appointment to be confirmed by both chambers of the National Assembly. It's like nominating a minister who is to be confirmed, who will have to be confirmed by the Senate. But in these cases, they have been appointed by, they've been nominated by the president. They may be said, in the eye of the law, to be performing their roles now in acting capacities. Until they are confirmed by both chambers of the National Assembly, they have not been appointed as service chiefs. And again, as I said, we need to move speedily, because the war on terror now has to be properly coordinated and prosecuted in the interests of peace and security of the country. So we shouldn't be bogged down, Yeah, go on.
So does that mean they cannot do anything as it stands right now?
They can act. I think the president will have to appreciate that the service chiefs are performing their roles now in acting capacities. But if the president would like to appoint them properly, he has to go through both chambers of the National Assembly.
Because
again, this is nothing new. It's not new. It's not,
because we've never heard acting service chiefs. I'm not sure that's, a term that is being used. But let's cast our minds back to 2015 quickly, when the president appointed or nominated or appointed in acting capacity the former service chiefs. And I recall in the statement that Mr. Femi Adesina put out then, he actually said it expressly that he will act they'll perform in acting capacity until confirmation by the National Assembly. So don't you think that based on that precedence, that's also what's the thinking here? So why raise any eyebrow?
Well, that is the position of the law. And instead of, I think in matters of this nature, it would be better to ask for the views of the Honorable Attorney General, and not press, media chiefs, the media aides of the president, who may not be in a position, to speak authoritatively on the law. And with respect to the judgment, nobody has challenged the judgment in the case of Keyamo and the president. And by virtue of Section 287 of the Constitution, all authorities and persons in Nigeria are bound by judgments and orders of courts, more so that there was no appeal against this particular judgment. So I would perhaps want to fall back, the president may want to fall back on Section 171 of the Constitution that empowers him, to make appointments or also appoint people in acting capacities, particularly heads of agencies, and this may be permitted this time around, and that is why I would like to advise that these names be submitted to the National Assembly as soon as possible, and there should be no embarrassment in this kind of situation,
Well,
so that we can be on the right path.
Yeah, you said something earlier about government, living in impunity, being selective about, what law to abide by, what law to not abide by, and you talked about the appointment of the IG and a number of other issues like that. So, in terms of, this impunity that you referenced now, and the suggestion of the announcement of government, which many people like you are saying it's either in error or it's something done deliberately to undermine another arm of government, in this case, the legislature. So in terms of doing things in the breach of the law, is there anything that can be done or should have been done to forestall that kind of situation? The one that you mentioned in particular, where you referenced the Governor Makinde's opinion about, the police, deployment of police and all of that. What can they do? What can the governors do when it is at the prerogative of the president that the meeting of police, the Security Council of the police can be called?
It's for our governors, and again, this goes for all arms of government, the need for us to run this country on democratic platform anchored on the rule of law. And which means before a government takes a decision, you must try and find out what are the relevant provisions of the law guiding the action we're about to take. And if you do that, and I think this government since 2015 ought to have put a machinery in place to ensure that the proper things are done so as to avoid this routine embarrassment with respect to appointments of people into public positions. And it goes for our governors as well. Everybody must appreciate, must familiarize himself or herself with the powers vested in you under the law. And if we can do this, we can avoid a lot of problems confronting the country. Again, you take somebody giving a quit notice. And I have regularly insisted that nobody can give a quit notice to another citizen. If you are dissatisfied with his action, even as a government, you must go to court. I mean, when beggars and destitutes were even deported from Lagos to some state, I came out, no, you cannot. You are compelled by the law to make provision for them. In this particular instance, government's hands are tied. You cannot arrest Mr. Sunday Igboho for giving a quit notice, because in the past, when somebody woke up one day and said, all Igbo people in the north must quit, I came out to say, no, you can't do it. It's not within your power to ask anybody to leave the country. Again, because that gentleman was not arrested at that material time, it's going to be difficult and inequitable to go for Sunday Igboho. So the governor of Oyo State will have to handle this matter within the ambit of the law and based on our experience in this country, so that we do not unnecessarily, divert attention from the criminality that is going on in many parts of the country.
Are you by any chance, Mr. Falano, are you by any chance alluding some political influences or considerations in these judgments that we make?
No, the president has just said, oh, we're not going to politicize security. But security is politicized in the country. It's politicized. We do not have the same standards. And that is why we run into problems. When governors recently, in some states in the north, forcefully remove Amajeris, the people who call Amajeris, and deported them to their so-called states of origin. Nobody protested on their behalf because they belong to the float sam and the jet sam of the society. Now, if the federal government did not protest on behalf of beggars, if you do not protect the interests of Amajeris, you will be in a fix if you have to protect the interests of herders in any other part of the country. And so this is why we have to maintain the same standards at all times and operate under the rule of law.
Well, we've seen lawyers cite Section 18(1) of the Armed Forces Act concerning the appointment of the service chiefs, and where it says the president may, after consultation with the Chief of Defense Staff and subject to confirmation by the National Assembly, appoint such officers in this act referred to as the service chiefs as he thinks fit, in whom the command of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, as the case may be, and their reserves shall be vested. And now, this is with regard to the federal character principle. Is this in line with Section 217 when they say as he deems fit? So can he decide to say, well, having appointed these are the people who I think can do the job, no matter where they come from?
You see, Chamberlain, Section 218 has empowered the National Assembly to make a law with respect to appointment and promotion, and discipline of members of the armed forces. And that was done with the enactment of the Armed Forces Act. So you cannot read one in isolation. You now have to look at the combined effect of Section 217, 218 of the Constitution and Section 18 of the Armed Forces Act. But again, as I said earlier, there is a pronouncement of the court on this matter. Lawyers can no longer dance around it. And that is the law today. Unless there is a decision of a higher court, either of the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court, setting aside that decision, we cannot begin a new controversy. We must follow the law as it is today, as opposed to what it should be.
Okay,
So that
but
we do not
how should they approach? Where does the principle of federal character come in here?
The principle of federal character affects all appointments. Apart from Section 14 of the Constitution that speaks of federal character, the Constitution also has provided for the setting up of a Federal Character Commission pursuant to Section 153 of the Constitution. And the guidelines are set out in the Constitution that all geopolitical zones, all other interests shall be reflected in appointment. And again, Chamberlain, we must be very careful that when we are talking of federal character, it's about the diversity of the country. It's not about ethnic composition of the government alone. Gender, there must be gender equality. Physically challenged people must be represented in government. The youth must be represented in government. The workers must be represented in government. But right now, when we talk about federal character, we limit ourselves to representation in government by the elite. And that's not what the Constitution is saying. It has to be a government of the people, for the people, by the people. And that is why there must be represented. For instance, only about 3 African countries, South Africa, South Africa, Ethiopia, and Rwanda, have gone to the stage of having gender equality in the cabinet. 50-50%, men and women.
All right, then.
And we must get to that level. This tokenism of, we're giving 30% to women, we're giving 20% to women. No, that is not what the Constitution is saying. The Constitution provides that there shall be no discrimination on the basis of sex. And you just had a situation in Ekiti State where a corporal has just been sacked because she became pregnant. No, that's illegal. You can't discriminate against her on the basis of her sex, because our colleagues who are men are equally be impregnating women. So, and there is already a case here too, the case of Wheeler and Attorney General of the Federation.
Okay, Mr. Falana.
So the law is very clear.
All right, then. We have to anchor at that point. Thank you very much indeed for your perspectives. Mr. Femi Falana is a senior advocate of Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
All right, and let's take a look at some comments coming through from you. We've got this one from Comrade Dari talking about the appointment of service chiefs. He says, Mr. Falana is right. This is what the Constitution provides for, but the appointment of service chiefs has always been done by the president. Mr. President ought to nominate while the legislature confirms it.
Well, Professor Inakena says, until we build stronger institutions that guarantees the continuations of government policies, speaking about the Corruption Perceptions Index, by the way, successive governments will continue to embark on jaded economic policies that do not impact positively on the lives of Nigerians. To fix Nigeria, he says, we must fix security and corruption.
When was the last time you heard any
Come on, say the name is on vitamin D.
I'm coming there. I mean, well, maybe the vitamin will come later.
How can somebody calls it vitamin D?
When was the last time you heard any sensitization message or advert on COVID-19 protocols from NOA? That's according to vitamin D. Maybe there's some kind of vitamin D. The NCDC alone cannot do this job of sensitization. They should get involved as soon as possible.
Okay, Mark, we have one for you, right?
Almost like as if he's echoing what vitamin D is saying. Says, National Orientation Agency hasn't been doing much on sensitizing the populace, most especially local communities.
Okay, and then Henry Amamo says, persuasion has always proved more effective than threat of imprisonment when the people trust the messengers and therefore believe the message. However, when the messengers call black white in broad daylight, an insurmountable problem arises. We should have time for one more thing. Come on, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I thought all this is why you should have just played it. Come on, don't be a spots behind the scenes.
It's the weekend.
No,
right?
boy. Can we? We should. Is he coming through? Nothing.
Oh, goodness.
All right. So there you go. We should have had it, but I guess that's it today. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you again. So now that definitely is not right. I mean, they were fighting, guess why? Because of the right to speak. They said the group had been positioning themselves as the group to speak for that host community, and then the host community says, no, we are here, we need to speak for ourselves. But that is what then happens. That doesn't mean that this will stall the passage of the PIB. Perish our thoughts if you ever thought that that was going to happen. But then we expect that the leaders or whoever, those people, particularly the brawler who was seen there uppercutting somebody else, I think they should have persuaded them to apologize to the country and their families, because that is bad. So that's the show today. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week. I'm Chamberlain. So
I couldn't even watch that. And I'm Kayode Fikele.
Amaya Makinde. Please be safe.
Well, an arrest will be in order. I think an arrest will be in order. Thank you for watching. I'm Mark Welcome, Yusuf.
have a good day.